Check, microphone, check, a perfect timing podcast in the building. One time. Let me make sure my audio is good. Is my audio good, everybody? Rock your body. Back streets, back. All right. Wait, okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. We in the building. Good morning, man. Let me have a sip of this good tea, man. How y'all doing this morning, man? Merc Grumman. We got the district attorney on the stand. Everybody, my gum is hurting. I don't know if I cut it or what. I got to talk to my dentist. We have the new district. No, I'm sorry. We have a lawyer from the DA's office on the stand. Right? Remember the other day, there was a question about prosecutorial misconduct. Shout out to Jeffrey Williams and his attorney, Brian. I'm going to review in this live stream. We're going to play Jeffrey's attorney's interview, and we're going to go over and break that down. Great attorney. He said Jeffrey's going to be vindicated. He's coming home innocent in January. Now, during that back and forth with the judge, Jeffrey's attorney was able to successfully suppress evidence from the arrest at Jeffrey's house. I don't think everyone understands what actually took place, because you got these pundits and these individuals who are actually not American citizens, who are not Black ADOS, FBA, indigenous, speaking on this topic. This is why people say, a lot of intelligent Black men say, why, Perfect, are you talking about this topic? Because there's so many non-Blacks talking about this topic in a derogatory fashion toward American Blacks. Academics are saying Black culture is crime culture, when the actual truth is that the Black woman is the most educated woman on the planet. If the Black woman is the most educated woman on the planet, then how can Black culture be crime culture? Academics, can you explain that to me? I just want to know. How can Black culture be crime culture if the Black woman is the American Black woman is the most educated, the most enrolled, the most graduated, the most degreed, the most accoladed, whatever you want to say it, however you want to say it. D.L. Euclid just spoke about this when he was talking about Stacey Abrams. Whatever metric you want to use, the most enrolled in college, the most graduated from college, the most educated, the most degreed, it doesn't matter. Whatever metric you use, Black women are at the tip top. So how can Black, unless you're separating Black, and then that's a further attack, academics, because I see the subliminals that academics is doing. There's no way an intelligent person could say that Black culture is crime culture. But that's the argument academics is making, right? And that's how you get this far with this case with Jeffrey. But his lawyer said he's going to be vindicated. Another thing, the reason why I'm going at academics, because there's a lot of bluster around these additional charges, right? But if you're reviewing the case, if you actually care about Jeffrey's children, the mother who was murdered at a bowling alley, he was home. He wasn't on tour. He wasn't at a party. He wasn't with a girl. He wasn't doing anything that you would think that Black men do with all of this money. He was at home with his children, consoling children who had just lost their mother to murder. And everyone wants to blame Jeffrey. I don't understand why everybody wants to blame Jeffrey. But Jeffrey was at home consoling his children. Guns are not illegal in America. You can own a firearm. It's a Second Amendment right. There's nothing illegal about having a gun in a home to protect children who just lost a mother to murder. This is the point I'm getting at. But no one is addressing the fact that these charges and that evidence from that arrest will be suppressed, and those charges are null and void. Everyone's saying, well, Thug is going to jail. Thug is doing time because the DA then front-loaded additional charges. But what just happened in the Tory Lane case? The same thing happened in the Tory Lane case. There's similarities in both of these cases. We have Black female district attorneys, just like with the Meek Mill cases of Black women. I've said that we have a mental health issue in the Black community between Black women and Black men. I have nothing personal against Black women, but I got to be a reporter. I got to call out The fact that this is a black woman and a black judge in Atlanta, this is a black district attorney in LA, and they are going out of their way because their emotional nature, they should not, I don't believe women, this is an example of why women should not be in roles like this, because they are not moving with logic and reason and within the law. Both of these black women have got themselves in a position because they overcharged the defendants, right? They overcharged Jeffrey and they overcharged Tory, right? So now they have lied. They've lied in both cases. They've lied in the Jeffrey Williams case. They lied to get the warrant, which is why his lawyer was so successful in decimating them on that whole arrest. Because they lied to get the warrant. They lied in the Tory Lanez case. They lied. This is why the district attorney is being embarrassed. The judge feels sorry for the district attorney. I believe is the judge in LA black. Somebody find out that the judge in LA is black. Is the judge in LA black? They overcharge these black men. These are black women, and they're using black bodies. I wouldn't be surprised because everyone uses black heterosexual males to get ahead in America. If you want to get a promotion, if you want to get noticed, you can chop off the head of a black heterosexual male. And these black women in LA and in Atlanta are rogue. The same thing with Meek Mill. This is a black female attorney who wanted to speak to Nicki Minaj and who wanted to get Meek Mill to do her favors at work. Think about what I'm saying. This is a black female judge who's trying to get Meek Mill to do her favors. When people wonder why Meek Mill has garnered such friends, billionaire friends like Robert Kraft, and he's been able to move such a way because they probably empathize with the fact that it has become a new race. It's a new racism in America. And these billionaires probably empathize with Meek Mill being treated like a slave by a black woman. It's actually perverted what's actually happening. 19 years she kept him enslaved. She couldn't justify anything she did. In Atlanta, this district attorney overcharged. She didn't charge Kevin Lyle. She didn't charge Lyle Cohen. She didn't charge Jack Harlow. But then she lets out the co-creator of YSL in 7 months. She lets out the #1 capo. Gunna is the Jim Jones of YSL, right? Gunna is the Sammy the Bull. How can Gunna go home in 7 months? Gunna was alleged to be calling shots. Gunna was alleged to be putting hits on people. Gunna was alleged to be Thugger's right-hand man. He was a cop. He was a capitan. Do y'all know the mafia? The RICO is a mafia statute, right? Gunna was a capitan. How could Gunna go home in 7 months? How could the co-creator go home in 7 months if this is such a bad thing? If this is a criminal, murderous investigation, how are all these men going home in 7 months? If I'm a part of the community in Atlanta, wouldn't you be upset if the district attorney put 28 fathers in prison, 28 millionaires in prison, took down a multi-billion-dollar record label, right? Co-owned by the founder and executives at YouTube. She must want to protect the safety of the people in Atlanta. But I can't see that. I can't see that because she just let everybody go in 7 months. So are the people safe? Is Young Gunna not gonna call hits on nobody? Huh? Is Young Gunna still tied to the network? You have the co-creator free. Can anybody just, this is the problem with academics controlling the narrative on this subject. The co-creator is free. If you believe, think about what I'm saying. If you believe YSL is a gang, the co-creator is free. If you believe YSL is a gang, if you believe YSL is a gang and the co-creator is free, how can Jeffrey not be free? How can you justify giving Jeffrey any more time than the time he has already served? Can someone speak to that for me? If the co-creator of YSL and the capo is free, and we're doing this to protect Atlanta, because remember, Buckhead, there were shootings, there were robberies, there were killings. If the co-creator, the co-founder of YSL is free, how do you justify this? Is the same thing in the Tory Lanez case. There's no residue on Tory. There's no actual proof that Tory shot the gun. Why did the district attorney go this far and embarrass herself? I don't know. But if the co-creator of YSL and the capo of YSL is free, how can academics get on the internet and justify Jeffrey getting 10 years, Jeffrey getting 20? How and why? Because he's black. This is the most racist thing I've ever heard in my life. How and why can Jeffrey get 10 to 20 years if the co-creator of the label, I'm sorry, not label, because they said it's a gang. If the co-creator of the gang, the other leader of the gang is free. The leader of the gang is free. How if I'm a citizen and I'm worried about the robberies, the murder, the drive-bys, what if I'm YFN Lucci? So YSL is under RICO, but YSL is in a gang war with YFN. Where's the RICO for YFN? It's the same thing with the R. Kelly case. R. Kelly gets charged with RICO, but with no co-conspirators. Jeffrey has 28 co-conspirators. R. Kelly has none. Oh, wait a minute. Perfect. You got that wrong. R. Kelly had 4 conspirators, but they were found innocent. Very similar, eerily similar to this case. Wait a minute. Perfect. What did you say? I said R. Kelly was charged with the RICO, but didn't have no conspirators, but that was incorrect. I wanted to correct myself. He did have co-conspirators, but all of R. Kelly's co-conspirators were found innocent. So if all of R. Kelly's co-conspirators are found innocent, then you got to throw out the RICO charge because there's no RICO charge because R. Kelly wasn't conspiring with anyone. And again, I'm going to reiterate this point, academics, because I know you listen to me. I know you still, hey, Sco, I know you listen to me. I know you still, Angry Man, I know you listen to me. I know you still, because the only people who will listen to me right now because of the bullshit going on with the internet is content creators, bitch-ass content creators who can't do what I do. So as you listen to me and steal from my content and you're unable to regurgitate the shit the way I said because you didn't finish fucking high school, let me say it to you one more time, academics. Please justify to your audience and to me logically, bring a fucking lawyer because you talk to lawyers, you talk to journalists. How the fuck do you keep saying on your podcast that Jeffrey gonna get 10 to 20 years? He's never committed a violent act. There's no gun in his hand. There's no drugs in his hand. And the co-creator of the gang is free after 7 months. And the capo who was in the car with him with the guns, with the drugs, who was on the text messages with the guns, with the drugs, who put out hits, Gunner, the Jim Jones, the capo of YSL is free after 7 goddamn months. How the fuck does Jeffrey get 10 to 20 years? Tell me that. Tell me that legally, objectively. How? When there's no smoking gun. Same thing with Tory. How? And then now his attorney has brought up prosecutorial misconduct, and today I'm going to show you a public defender on the fucking stand. I've been doing court cases for over 2 years. I've never seen a public defender on the stand. I've been doing court cases for 2 years. I've never seen a public defender on the stand. So what's going on? I got the video up now. That was a good intro. Very powerful, perfect timing. Let's go to the video. I got the video up now. Fair use is in full effect on the channel right now. Fair use is in full effect. Shout out to everybody watching, tuning in. Nobody's watching right now. I haven't gone live on this channel in a long time. It's all good. As soon as I get there, they're on my beautiful fair use banners. So as soon as I get this up, I'm gonna go ahead and start the show. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? All right, so let's go ahead and start the live stream.
Served the Fulton County District Attorney's Office as a Deputy District Attorney.
Since June 21st, 2011.
And when did you first begin with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
June 21st, 2011.
What are your, what area do you work in within the district attorney's office?
I am the head of the unindicted homicide unit. I review all of the murder cases that come, well, not just murder, all homicide cases that come into the office from the various police agencies in the county.
And you made a distinction between murders and homicides. Why is that?
Well, it's not just murder. There's felony murder. There's involuntary manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, homicide by vehicle in the first degree, et cetera.
Have you always served as the head of the unindicted homicide unit?
No.
Before serving as the head of the unindicted homicide unit, what did you do within the district attorney's office?
For approximately the first 3 months of my employment in the DA's office, I was assigned to what was called at the time the complaint room, which was a 24-hour operation in which I would receive or be assigned cases that were coming in live. Essentially, somebody had just been arrested and the police would send a report. I would review it, speak with the officer, draft some sort of affidavit to summarize the case, and otherwise ready the case for first appearance the following morning. Following that, I was assigned to the non-complex division. I was in that division for 3 to 6 months. It sounds about right. That involved the prosecution of cases that were deemed non-complex, such as possession of cocaine and theft by taking under a certain value. After my time in the non-complex division, I was assigned to the complex trial division for about a little less than 2 years, signed to Judge Schwall's courtroom and then Judge Constance Russell's courtroom. And then in October of 2013, I was assigned to the unindicted homicide unit, albeit I was not the head of the unindicted homicide unit, though. If memory serves correctly, I was the only attorney in the unit, so I suppose in a way I was the head, given that I was the only one. But then as time went on, the unit expanded. I was promoted, and now there's more employees in the unit. And now I'm the deputy in charge of it.
Within the homicide unit of the district attorney's office, do you receive cases involving homicides where persons are charged or already arrested?
Yes.
And is it always the case that a person has been charged or arrested when you receive a file within the office?
No.
When you do receive a file wherein a person has been arrested, do you immediately present that case to the grand jury?
No.
Why is that?
Well, I want to ensure that the person who's been charged or arrested primarily committed the crime that it is alleged they committed. So in order to do that, I inspect the case file, which primarily, if not, well, I don't want to say exclusively, because there are some things that I find on my own. But when I'm preliminarily looking at a case file, I look at what the police have sent me, their reports, their interviews, cell phone records, the extractions of cell phones, when the police actually copy the data out of somebody's cell phone. And I just go over all of this to make sure it's consistent with what has been alleged in the arrest warrants.
And do you always have all of the information within the case file given to you by law enforcement that you feel you need in order to fully complete the investigation on a homicide?
No, not always. No.
And what types of steps do you take to ensure that you have obtained as much information as you can? Do you, for instance, do you pull jail calls?
Yes.
Do you speak with witnesses?
I do on occasion, yes.
Do you go to scenes?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Your Honor.
Is it preliminary matter? Is it preliminary matters?
Thank you.
I'll allow it. Over the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you go to scenes?
Yes.
Do you seek search warrants?
Yes.
And do you present evidence to other entities for further testing?
Yes.
And does that always take limited amounts of time, or is that sometimes more protracted?
Well, it depends on the case and the volume of deficiencies that I have identified in the initial investigation.
Bringing you to the case involving the murder of Donovan Thomas, do you recall when you received that case file within the district attorney's office?
Would have been late, probably December 2015, January of 2016, somewhere around there. It's actually probably going to be January of 2016 to be more exact.
And without going into specifics about what that was, at the time that you received that case file, was it complete to your satisfaction as an assistant district attorney?
Well, it depends on how you define the word complete. Was it complete insofar as the Atlanta Police Department was concerned? I don't know. I know that they handed me everything that I asked for. If there were some other documents that the Detective Thorpe still had in his file, they just didn't give to me. I have no way of knowing that. As far as I know, what the Atlanta Police Department gave me was the complete case file.
And did you review that complete case file that you received from the Atlanta Police Department?
I did.
Upon reviewing that case file, were you satisfied that the case was sufficient to present to the grand jury as you received it at that time?
No.
Did you take additional steps to investigate the case?
Yes.
Now, at the time, a person had been arrested on the murder, is that correct?
Yeah, at least one person had been arrested on the murder.
And that person was the defendant Shannon Stillwell?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
From what you were able to gather from the file that Detective Thorpe gave you and from your subsequent investigation of the case that you did, was Mr. Stillwell the only person of interest in that case? Was he the only alleged participant in the homicide?
Well, no, there were three other. If we're talking about the people that had been charged by the police, there were four.
Okay, go ahead.
There was Antonio Sledge, Demikian Garlington, Kenneth Copeland, and Shannon Jackson, aka Shannon Stillwell. Those were the four people that the police charged for the murder of Donovan Thomas in late 2015.
And were you able to determine, based on your review of the file given to you by Detective Thorpe, what primarily those arrests were based on?
They were primarily based on the statement of a young man named Spencer Wright.
All right. And when you received the file from Detective Thorpe, did you endeavor to speak with Spencer Wright yourself?
I did.
Why is that?
Well, so Spencer Wright, according to his statement, he witnessed the homicide, the drive-by shooting, as he stood at a bus stop on McDaniel Street across the street from the barber shop, the parking lot of which Mr. Donovan Thomas stood when he suffered his fatal gunshot wounds. There was a surveillance camera mounted on that barber shop, and the bus stop where Mr. Wright said he stood was in the viewing area of that surveillance camera. And when I looked at the footage, I didn't see anyone standing at the bus stop. I saw a cat at one point milling about the bench at the bus stop, and I only bring that up to indicate that the clarity was sufficient to tell if there was a human being standing there. There was no human being standing there. So what I wanted to do was speak with Mr. Wright and show him, I believe I printed off some still images. I don't think I brought in a computer or something to show him the actual footage. So I wanted to speak with Mr. Wright and make sure, first thing I did is I wanted to speak with him and make sure that I was clear as to where he was standing. So I actually, before I confronted him with the fact I didn't see him on the video, I had some printouts from Google Earth, and I asked him to point to the specific bus stop where he said he was standing. And when he did, he pointed to the bus stop that was depicted on the surveillance footage, at which point I said, but there's nobody standing at that bus stop. And he didn't really have an explanation for me.
Did you receive that surveillance footage from the Atlanta Police Department?
Yeah, yes.
Did you, as you stated, you pulled Google Earth images. Was that something that you had received from the Atlanta Police Department, or is that something that you did to further your investigation?
That was something I did to aid in my interview with Mr. Wright. I just pulled up Google Earth and took screenshots of the bus stop and the general area where the homicide occurred so he could point to them and indicate where he stood, where he claimed to have been standing, I should say.
And why did it concern you that he was not shown in the surveillance footage that you presented to him, yet he claimed to have witnessed the homicide?
Well, he claimed that the bus stop was his vantage point from which he witnessed the four defendants that I mentioned earlier occupying a vehicle and commit the drive-by shooting. If he wasn't standing at the bus stop, that would suggest he didn't witness it at all.
Was there anything else that you were able to uncover during your ensuing investigation of this case that enlightened you more as to whether or not Mr. Wright was presenting to you information that was factually accurate?
Yes. So after my interview with him, I requested from the Atlanta City Jail, because that's where he was when I interviewed him. I interviewed him inside the Atlanta City Jail. He was an inmate there. From somebody that worked at the Atlanta City Jail, whose name I don't recall. But I asked him to send me Mr. Wright's recorded jail calls, because just like the Fulton County Jail, at least at that time, the phone calls placed by inmates from the Atlanta City Jail were recorded. So when I obtained Mr. Wright's jail calls, I found one that was placed shortly after his arrest to a gentleman. And during this call, and this is, by the way, not verbatim, okay? I'm not quoting him exactly, but he told his friend about his recent arrest, which I believe was on a probation violation. And he said that everything would be okay because he was helping the police solve a murder. And his friend asked, well, what murder was that? He said Nuts murder, and that Nut would be the moniker for Donovan Thomas. And his friend scoffed at him and said, but you didn't witness that. And Mr. Wright responded, he basically shushed him, reminding him that they were on a recorded jail line. But the implication there was that he didn't witness it. He would prefer that his friend not, utter such a thing on a recorded jail phone. And then he said, but it's something to the effect of, it doesn't matter. We all know what happened anyway. And it's also worth mentioning that during my interview with Mr. Wright, very soon into the interview, something that caught my attention was, he said, you see, I've been on Instagram, or again, not verbatim, but he mentioned that he had been on Instagram and putting the pieces together from there, which put up a red flag, made me think that perhaps he was just compiling his statement through rumors that he saw on the internet. So after I heard that jail call, I asked investigator David White. I knew who he was talking to. I can't recall his name off the top of my head, but the gentleman that he was talking to, and the same gentleman that said, but you didn't witness that, et cetera. So my investigator reached out to him and asked him, well, how did you know that Mr. Wright didn't witness the murder of Donovan Thomas? And he said, well, that murder was a really big deal in the city, and I'm pretty close with Mr. Wright, and he never mentioned to me that he had witnessed it. And it's the kind of thing that he would have mentioned had he witnessed it. So at that point, I was satisfied that Mr. Wright didn't really witness the murder at all, and he just made it up.
Why didn't you just go ahead and present the information to the grand jury as had been presented to you by the Atlanta Police Department? People had been arrested. Is it an imperative that you immediately get the case indicted?
Objection.
Who's made the objection?
Self-serving.
I sustain that's the form. You can rephrase it. You can rephrase it.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Sprinkle, is there any reason in particular why you did not go ahead and present the indictment to the grand jury with the names and the information that had been given to you from the police department?
Well, for one thing, I'm not the one who decides what cases are presented to the grand jury, but if I was, I still wouldn't, because at that point, out of 3 of the 4 defendants, I had a complete absence of evidence that they committed the murder at all. And I wouldn't present a case naming a specific individual. I wouldn't present an indictment to a grand jury wherein a specific individual is alleged to have committed a crime when there's a total absence of evidence that they actually committed the crime. That would actually violate state bar rules for me to do that.
And Your Honor, if the court would, just so that I'm aware, is there any other party to this defendant Stillwell's motion to dismiss that I'm unaware of?
I have not, the court is unaware of anybody else who's joined in this preparation.
Okay.
So.
Your Honor, if I can answer that now, Ms. Dorsey. The state keeps saying that because this is RICO, everything applies to everything. I have adopted the motions of everybody, so I do reserve the right to ask some questions of the witness, Your Honor. But based on the theory that the state says that because it's RICO, everything applies to my client, I do want to make it very clear. I can have nothing to do with this.
Your Honor, this is Shannon Stillwell's assertion of his constitutional right to a speedy trial. I do not believe that Mr. Chadha or his client have any right to assert as it relates to Shannon Stillwell's assertion of his right or the denial thereof to a speedy trial. And I would ask that the court limit questioning and argument and commentary to the parties that are involved in this particular motion.
Your Honor, as it relates to Mr. Mark Quavius, he has nothing to do with it as well in terms of the
specifics of a murder. However, he's a part of this indictment.
Yeah, well, the issue you're going to have is that since it's a RICO case and anything can be attributed to any other defendant, that's why that they have a right of confrontation as to this. Now, so the specific relief is only available to Mr. Stillwell, but counsel are entitled to ask other questions as they see fit.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if I may, just to be clear, on Mr. Williams' behalf, we do claim an interest in the outcome and the argument of this motion. We understand it's Mr. Stillwell's motion, but again, as the court has indicated, because this is a RICO indictment, Mr. Williams is charged in it. He has an interest and an ability to pose objections if necessary.
Deputy Sprinkle, after you determined that the information that you had been given was inaccurate or could not be verified, did you take additional steps to investigate the homicide, the murder of Donovan Thomas?
I did.
And would you tell the court whether or not this was a sort of high-profile case within the office?
It was.
And are you able to say what impact the case itself had on the office or on the city of Atlanta that caused it to be a high-profile case?
Basis.
Irrelevant. What does high-profile case have to do with anything?
All right.
I was fine, Your Honor.
Why don't you explain that for our rule?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the reason that I asked about it being a high-profile case is to sort of lay the groundwork for the fact that the office did not seek to not investigate or to not make sure that we got the case right. By asking whether it was a high-profile case, it's to bring out to the court the mindset with which Deputy Sprinkle investigated the case.
Okay, I'm going to overrule your objection. Go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to
Thank
be
you, Your Honor.
clear.
I've overruled your objection.
Did that murder carry with it a series of violent shootings within the city of Atlanta?
Yes, for many years following that.
Basis. Why don't you rephrase?
I can do that. Thank you, Judge. After the murder of Donovan Thomas, were there multiple shootings within the city of Atlanta within days, sometimes weeks, and months?
Objection, relevance.
I
There's
have
multiple
one
shootings
basis.
going on in this.
I'm going to overrule. Let her finish, okay? And then I'll okay? All right, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Judge. Were there multiple shootings within the city of Atlanta?
Yeah,
Objection out of relevance.
I was going to say this to leading. Why don't you ask him what happened as a result of that, if he knows, if any?
After the murder of Donovan Thomas, and let me back up, were there any gang implications to the investigation? In other words, during your investigation and during your initial review of the file, was there any indication from the information that you had within the file that the murder was gang-related?
yes.
And what gangs were alleged to have been involved?
Englewood family, that was the gang to which Mr. Donovan Thomas was a member, a high-ranking member. And the other gang was YSL, or Young Slime Life, to which Mr. Williams was a member.
Did you gain knowledge?
I'm going to object to that
Basis.
answer.
Basis.
Speculation, and after to be stricken.
I'm going to overrule the objection. What's your objection?
It's a legal conclusion. Criminal street gang is a legally defined term, has to be determined by 12 people from the city from.
That may be in front of a jury, but this is the district attorney's investigation. I'm going to overrule your objection.
Your Honor, so just so I'm clear, we are speaking just in layman's terms when we say gang at this moment, not in legal terms.
I'm still going to overrule your objection, okay? Thank you.
How can you overrule? Hold on. I'm not letting that ride. I'm not letting, how you going to overrule that? How are you going to overrule? Hold on, I'm not letting that ride. In the Kyle Rittenhouse case, that's why I'm doing this, so you guys can pay attention. I'm not letting that ride. And the person who keeps coming in and out of my chat, please, sir, just remove yourself. How I'm not letting that ride. In the Kyle Rittenhouse case, Kyle Rittenhouse is on camera killing a man, and the judge, specifically, the case went viral. I started covering the Kyle Rittenhouse case. This was pre-trial. And Kyle Rittenhouse, just like this, is pre-trial. There are no jurors in the courtroom. Pre-trial, the judge made the burden be on the state. Pre-trial, the judge made the burden be on the state, and they could not call Kyle Rittenhouse a murderer. They could not even refer to those individuals who were killed by Kyle Rittenhouse as victims, because that would imply that Kyle Rittenhouse actually committed a crime. And Kyle Rittenhouse had the presumptions of innocence. That's why I did the Kyle Rittenhouse case. That's when I first started doing the Kyle Rittenhouse. Tracy, let me know if my microphone is too loud, because we be having some sensitive, prissy men who listen to the channel. And it's always men. We have some very sensitive, prissy men on YouTube. Sensitive, prissy, feminine men on YouTube. So Tracy, just let me know. Tracy and my moderators, let me know if my audio is good, because I don't want to be yelling at everybody when I get excited. I do want to get excited and show my emotion, but I don't want to turn off any of the sensitive individuals who have these negative Nancys who can't deal with a black man with the voice that I have. Is actually very sad, because it's typically mostly black men. In the Kyle Rittenhouse case, the judge made the burden. I said this the other day when I was on the panel. There's no presumptions of innocence for black men in the court. That's why I'm doing this case. There's no presumptions of innocence for black men in the case. Did you hear his lawyer? His lawyer said that we're speaking about gang as lay terms. You cannot move forward in this case once jurors come into the courtroom and refer to YSL as a gang, when YSL is a multi-million-dollar record company. Gunna, who is free before arrested, was the #1 rapper. He sat next to LeBron James and Steve Stout when Pusha P was the #1 song. Steve Stout would have made sure that Pusha P got nominated for a Grammy. But instead, here we are. And now they're being able to call YSL gang in court. And YSL has not been proven to be a gang. Jeffrey is innocent. They have not proved YSL is a gang by a jury. They have circumvented the law. So I just had to pause it right there. I just want to pause it right there just to point out the fact of what's happening and why I do these trials and the nuances. So individuals who are paying attention to each one of these cases. And what I said about Kyle Rittenhouse is, I don't believe Kyle Rittenhouse got more justice. I believe Kyle Rittenhouse got a fair trial. And the sad part is, by Kyle Rittenhouse trial being published in the way it was, we were able to see what justice looks like. So now every time I see a trial, I know when there's a miscarriage of justice. And I know when the judge is not working in the best interest of the defendant, who has a presumption of innocence, and he's not putting the burden on the state. At every turn, he is assisting the state. The same thing is happening in LA. The Los Angeles district attorney lost her case, and now the judge is helping. That is against Constitution. The judge should not be assisting the DA. In Young Thug's case, the judge is helping the rogue district attorney who overcharged, went rogue with wiretaps and warrants. This only happens to black men. Let's go back to the case. So all you negative Nancy's come back who don't like my voice. But check this out. This is the Perfect Timing Podcast live. We simulcasting live on 3 channels right now. Really, with 2 channels. I'm on Perfect Timing Podcast on Facebook. I'm on Perfect Timing Podcast on TikTok. I'm on Patrick Potter on Facebook. I'm on Perfect Timing Podcast on Instagram. Perfect_timing_podcast. We rocking out this morning. So thank you to everybody who came through. All the new people stopped through. Make sure you hit the subscribe. This is the backup channel, Perfect Timing Podcast Live. I think we got like 40 subscribers. So get the subscribes up. Get the likes up. Don't just sit in here for free. I don't care how you feel this morning. Come and go as you please. But make sure you subscribe and get the HBU, man. Hook a brother up. Let's go back to court, man. Keep in mind what's happening here. The judge already corrected this black district attorney several times. She's trying to relate. The reason why they objected is because this district attorney testified to a shooting, and she wants to associate all other shootings in Atlanta with this one gang-related shooting. And the lawyers are saying, you can't ask that question. There's a million shootings that happen in Atlanta every day. Just because one person is murdered, you can't attribute the rest of these murders to Jeffrey, and Jeffrey hasn't hurt a fly, you guys. Let's go back to the case. And thank you, Tracy, for checking the audio for me. You know, these negative Nancy's get, sensitive. But they only hate watching. That's why they leave when I start talking, Tracy. You notice that? They're not supporters, right? They're not actually supporters. They're hate watching. They're hate watching. That's why they leave whenever I start talking. I don't know what it is. It's this new millennial generation. I don't know. Hate watching is not a term for us, Tracy. I would never hate watch anyone. You know, these young people, you just live streaming somewhere else. Tracy. This live stream is like several other places. You don't have to come here. This live stream is several other places. I'm going to stop it as much as I want. I'm going to talk as much as I want. I love hearing my voice. I love interacting with my audience. Thank you, Tracy, for hanging out. I'm sharing the video so I can get more of my 5.0 people in here to just say I love you and Merry Christmas and prayer covering over you. I love interacting with my audience. So I'm going to stop the video as much as I want. I'm going to interject as much as I want. So other people who hate watch, just watch it somewhere. Oh my God. Or you can hate watch. I don't control what you do. I just want you to have a joyous holiday and a fruitful day. And I don't think it's very productive of your time to hate watch someone you don't like when you can watch the video without interruption. Anywhere else. Think about that, Tracy. Anywhere else. But no, they want to hate watch. And they want to give me critique. Oh, you shouldn't interrupt the video. Or you should let it play. I'm going to do what I want to do. If you want to watch it without interruption, please do. It's available for you. I encourage you. Go watch it without interruption. Come back with some intelligent commentary. We can debate. I'll invite you on the panel. But I'm going to do my thing. Salute.
You have information that led you to believe that a series of retaliatory shootings between YSL and Inglewood family took place across the city of Atlanta.
I'm going to object because it calls for hearsay.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, the defendant, Shannon Stillwell, has alleged an intentional delay on the part of the state. What led us to further our investigation and what information we had?
Goes to conduct?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Did you have information that led you to believe that a series of retaliatory shootings between YSL and Inglewood family
goes to conduct, helping out the district attorney again? If she's making an objection, she should have said, I ask the conduct. He's helping the district attorney again.
Identified as YSL or Inglewood family, and commonly the shooters would generally be in the rival gang. I don't want to say there were no cases that involved the same members of the same gang shooting at each other, but primarily it was opposing gangs that were shooting at each other. The participants that were identified were in opposing gangs. Those 2 gangs specifically, yes.
And during that time, Did you and the Fulton County District Attorney's Office gang unit work closely with the Atlanta Police Department in an effort to solve the murder of Donovan Thomas, as well as find out whether or not those series of shootings were related, in fact, to the murder of Donovan?
The gang unit, the office's gang unit, I believe they were in consultation with Detective Thorpe, but I don't recall speaking with Detective Thorpe prior to him obtaining warrants for the arrest of the four men that he originally charged.
And that is before the arrest of the persons that were originally charged. I'm speaking of during the months in the year 2015, 2016, did you obtain more information that led you to believe that the murder of Donovan Thomas was gang related?
Right. Well, yeah, I would routinely consult with Detective Tyrone Dennis with the Atlanta Police Department. He also worked very, very closely on the murder case and, alongside Detective Jim Thorpe Jr.
And were there incidents, shooting incidents that took place, and other incidents that took place that involved members of the alleged offending gang or YSL?
Yes, either, as I said, the victim was identified as being in one gang or the other. The shooters are identified as being in the opposite gang. There were shell casings that, when placed under microscopes and the tool mark on the back of the casing was compared to various incidents, they would find that similar guns, or the same guns, I should say, were used in these various incidents, which could possibly indicate that the same participants were involved.
And did you prepare a supplemental report to the case file that you have been given by Detective Thorpe in order to outline the investigation that you conducted in this case between the time that you received it and November 13, 2018?
Yes.
I'm showing to you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 1.
Yeah, Ms. Love, we're going to just use the next exhibit in order. So what's that, Ms. Rosenwasser?
11. Would the court like for me to then label it State's Exhibit?
States 11, yes, ma'am, if you wouldn't mind, please.
I sure will. I'm showing you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 11. SS. Would you take a look at it? In your honor, I will, at the end of this tendering of this exhibit, ask that the court allow me to tender a digital copy of this as evidence. Under seal.
Okay. Yes, I've looked at State's Exhibit 11.
Does State's Exhibit 11 contain the supplemental report that you prepared outlining and detailing the investigation that you conducted up until November 13th of 2018?
It does, but as you can see, I brought a copy of my report to the stand with me anyway, and it looks like there may be a page missing from this one because my report has a page that only has about 2 sentences on it, but so this may be a page short, basically.
And
If you are just Sudi Chad, we have a story. Please be provided a copy of the report that he.
Oh, never mind. There it is. Yeah. Okay.
If it was, or
I think he just testified as missing some sentences, so we just appreciate we get a copy of whatever he's actually looking at.
he would be entitled to, he would be required to update that particular as part of continuing discovery. So to the extent, Ms. Love, you have not done that, go ahead and do so, okay?
thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Deputy Sprinkle, would you please clarify for the court whether or not the page you were referencing is contained within State's Exhibit 11?
It is. You just turn the page over. It turns out I guess it was facing the wrong way. So no, that's my full report.
Thank you. Your Honor, the state tender State's Exhibit 11, and with the court's permission, I would like to enter evidence digitally under seal.
Okay, so Brandon,
Your Honor, I object.
And Your Honor,
basis, is this part of the order that I entered before?
No, it's not.
Why do you want to enter it under seal, madam?
Only because it contains information, personal information about witnesses. The defense has been provided this report on August 8th, I believe, 2022 in its entirety. I am happy to let defense counsel look at it, review it, and compare it to their copy of the discovery that has been previously served.
Okay,
My issue is not with under seal per se.
but then I'm going to seal it then, okay?
No, it's not with that. My issue is admitting, we're having a.
Well, you're,
It's
okay.
hearsay.
No, but you've made it an issue for the purposes of your speedy trial demand.
Right.
So they are introducing as part of what they, as if I understand it, given the factors, is that what they did and the reason for the delay. Is that what you're doing, Ms. Love?
Yes.
So I mean, so that's why they're introducing it for for that limited purpose. So
With all due respect, Your Honor, he can testify to what he did.
he just did, but in terms of if the case goes up on appeal, then of course the appellate court will have an opportunity to take a look at it.
For the record, I would just like to say that there's a lot more in that report than what he's testified to through live testimony. And we are objecting to conducting this hearing through proffer, which is essentially what we're doing.
Well, you got live testimony because you haven't even examined Mr. Sprinkle yet. So you certainly will be able to do that. But I'm going to admit it and seal it over your objection states 11. Okay. And you'll be able to get with Ms. Love and her colleagues and take a look at it. The original, the discovery that you were provided back in August in relation to this particular document, and the state will need to, of course, disclose or let you give you that particular evidence, anything discovery they haven't done so far. Okay.
And we will be able to cross-examine Mr. Sprinkle on all of the contents of that document that's being admitted as evidence. Is what I want to make sure we're able to do.
If they're introducing in evidence, yeah, you get to cross them about anything you want in terms of that particular document.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Deputy Sprinkle, did your investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas cease entirely as of November 13th, 2018?
No, it didn't.
Would you just briefly encapsulate some of the additional investigations that you participated in or conducted between 2018 and May 2021?
Okay, so in 2019, there were at least 2 gang-related murders that involved the YSL Street Gang and the Englewood Family Street Gang. One was a February 23rd, 2019 murder involving a victim named Jamari Holmes and some YSL gang members named Damone Blaylock and Rodalius Ryan. I did a lot of work on that case. But for purposes of this hearing, I did a search warrant to Instagram for, I believe it was 4 or 5 accounts belonging to YSL gang members. Now, the reason why is that search warrant was for the accounts of the people that were participants in the February 23rd, 2019 murder of Jamari Holmes, of course. But with any search warrant that I did for concerning either one of those gangs, the murder of Donovan Thomas was always really just on the front of my mind because that.
Why?
It was the murder of Donovan Thomas that was essentially the primary genesis of the dispute between these 2 gangs that had claimed the lives of so many people and wounded countless others. So I always, when investigating any case.
This is irrelevant.
Madam.
Your Honor, Deputy Sprinkle is talking about the investigation that he continued to conduct into the murder of Donovan Thomas and why it is that he did what he did during that investigation. If again, the state's intent is at issue, Mr. Sprinkle's steps taken during the investigation are reflective of the state's intent.
Okay. I'll overrule your objection, sir.
May I respond to that?
What is it you want to tell me? I mean, I've overruled the objection, so what more do you want me to know?
The state just proffered evidence, and I don't think that's correct, Your Honor. They,
Well, then cross-examine him when you got him on cross.
I understand.
So you're a little, you know, you're a little early, okay? When you got him on cross, you can ask him these questions that you're not allowing him to answer right now. But it's relevant for the purposes of delay and the reason for delay. So can we move on from that? Okay.
In May of 2021, was the case involving the murder of Donovan Thomas turned over to a specific team in the district attorney's office as part of a broader investigation?
It was.
All right, and who was it turned over to?
Don Geary was the primary attorney on the case.
And is that case, or did that case form the basis for the indictment that the defendant sits on today, charged with both the murder of Donovan Thomas and the murder of Shamel Driggs?
Yes, yes, it is, because I at that point was consulting with my coworkers and recommending that we pursue an indictment on the murder case, at which point the others determined that a team should be assembled because this case encompassed a lot more than just the murder of Donovan Thomas. So at that point, my case file was handed, but that was the first step, was my investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas. And then I wasn't working very closely with them. I would of course answer their questions, of which they had many when they had them, but I wasn't in a room working with them on a daily basis. But from what I understood and what would eventually see when the indictment came out, was they were working on this vast RICO case.
And are you aware of a wiretap being used to gain information in furtherance of the investigation of this RICO case that you referenced just now?
Yeah, I drafted all the documents associated with it and performed the minimization procedures and reviewed periodically would spot review the work of the monitors.
And was that in April 2022?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. April 2022, I think towards the end of that month, yes.
And did the investigation that took place between the time that you were given the file by Detective Thorpe and the time that this case was initially presented to the grand jury, form the basis for the indictment 22SC 183572?
Yes.
Thank you. Just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Deputy Sprinkle, between November 2018 and May 2021, did you work with any other prosecutors on this case or on the investigation involving the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Well,
Did you at any time work with Deputy Kiera Convery?
oh, yes. Deputy Kara Convery and I spoke about this case and exchanged information on a regular basis throughout the entirety of the investigation.
And where did Deputy Kiera Convery work within the district attorney's office?
She was the head of the gang unit. I don't recall which year. I know Gabe Banks was the head right when the case came in. I believe you were the head of the gang unit at some point. And then Kara Convery, probably by 2019, she was the head of the gang unit.
Was there ever a time, Deputy Sprinkle, that you delayed this case to get a tactical advantage over the defendant, Shannon Stillwell?
No, I didn't want to delay the case at all.
And was this a case of average complexity?
No, this is an extremely complex case.
Just one moment, Your Honor. That's all that I have for now.
All right, Mr. Sharp, go ahead, sir.
How you doing today?
Very well, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. As I understand it, your role in the DA's office is you receive a case file from APD.
Well, many times, most of the time actually from APD, but there are other agencies in Atlanta, in Fulton County, of course.
And you work on that case file and bring it up, build it up for indictment if you feel that is warranted.
Correct.
Okay. But you did tell us that you are not the person who decides when to indict a case.
That's correct.
Who is that person?
Well, back in 2015, 2016,
Yes,
that would have been the District Attorney Paul Howard.
that was Mr. Howard back in 2015 and 2016. Okay. How long did Mr. Howard have that decision-making power on when Shannon Stillwell would be indicted on the 2015 case?
Well, presumably all the way up until the last day of 2020. I believe that was the last day he was in office. I could be wrong about that, but it would have definitely been around that time.
And who took over that decision-making power in 2020?
The current DA, Fonnie Willis, and her and her agents, people like myself and Adam Body and Pat Dutcher.
Okay. So when Ms. Love asks if you delayed the indictment to get a tactical advantage on Shannon Stillwell, it wasn't even your decision, was it?
That is correct. That is correct.
That question about choosing when to indict from 2015 to 2020 should be asked of Paul Howard, correct?
I cannot.
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis.
The question about whether or not the decision to indict should have been left to Paul Howard is not proper. It does not speak to Deputy Sprinkle's actions and steps that he took during this investigation in order to make sure that it was thoroughly vetted.
They tried to create the impression that Mr. Sprinkle's the one that called the shots, and he's clearly not. And now that I've asked him about it and it's clear he didn't, now it's irrelevant. They asked him if he delayed the indictment of Shannon Stillwell. I'm saying it was delayed and my client has been prejudiced.
Okay,
and I want to hear from the person who made that decision.
Well, it's one factor that I'll weigh, Mr. Shart. So go ahead and move on. Because
So-
we've had another district attorney since then, and it's part of the overall investigation. So his response might be, I'm assuming it's correct, but certainly has to be looked at in terms of the continuum of other things that went on in this case. So, and I'm sure you're going to examine him about those.
Yes, Your Honor. And so starting in 2020, the decision-making was DA Fonnie Willis.
2021, yes.
2021. All right. Okay. When was Shannon Stillwell charged in this case?
I believe it was September 2015.
Okay. If I suggested that was October 2015, would you dispute me on that?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. And would you dispute that he was arrested in October of 2015?
I'm quite sure it would have been around that time, the last quarter of 2015. Based on when I received the case file, that would be in line with that.
And he was placed in jail?
He was.
Okay. Now, my client, Mr. Stillwell, was charged in 2015, October 2015. Who else did you say was charged at that time?
Antonio Sledge, briefly, because his case was dismissed at the preliminary hearing.
Okay.
Kenneth Copeland and Demikian Garlington.
And that's the same Kenneth Copeland that is on the state's witness list?
Yes.
Okay. And it was Detective Thorpe of APD that made the decision to charge my client, Mr. Stillwell?
Yes,
And it was Detective Thorpe of APD who made the decision to charge Mr. Sumlin, Mr. Copeland, and Mr. Garlington?
Mr. Copeland, Mr. Garlington, I believe you meant to say Mr. Sledge?
Sledge, I'm sorry.
Yes, yes,
I said Sumlin instead of Sledge.
yes.
And you're telling us that the decision to charge those 4 individuals was based on the word of Spencer Wright?
Well, for 3 out of 4 of them, if my memory serves correctly, it was essentially entirely based on Spencer Wright. Your client, there was a little bit more evidence.
And we're going to get to that, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So, but for the other 3, well, for all 4, a man named Spencer Wright claimed to be at the scene of the murder and named those people as being involved.
That's, yes.
And when Spencer Wright, are you aware of the circumstances that brought Spencer Wright into contact with Detective Thorpe to tell Detective Thorpe this?
Generally, yes.
Did Spencer Wright have pending charges?
Spencer Wright had been, if my memory serves correctly, I know that he didn't just show up to the precinct out of the goodness of his heart. He had been pulled over, if I remember correctly. During the traffic stop, he threw a gun away in the bathroom at the gas station. He lied about his name, and there was an investigator, Lakia Gaither, just happened to recognize him and reminded him of what his name actually was. So he had a firearm, and I believe he had a probation violation warrant. So he was taken into custody contemporaneously with his statement.
And so we're clear, you wouldn't dispute that Spencer Wright had a motive to lie?
Yes,
That would be correct.
yes.
Okay. And Spencer Wright actually came in at the same time that he named these 4 individuals as being involved in this murder and gave police a false name?
He did at first, and one of them, like I said, just happened to know him. And this is all from memory, but I'm pretty sure this is correct.
So he lied about his name,
He did.
and the police knew this.
Yes, they did.
And they took his word on who to arrest on a murder.
That's what happened, yes.
Okay. And through your investigation, you would agree that 3 of the 4 defendants in this case have changed since then regarding the 2015 shooting.
3 out of the 4, okay, so first of all, what do you mean by change, and which 3 defendants are we
There
talking
was
about?
4 people that were charged in October of 2015 by Detective Thorpe. 3 of those 4 people are no longer charged.
Oh, I understand. In other words, we ultimately indict a different set of people than were ultimately charged by the police. Is that your question?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. We did indict Shannon Stillwell, aka Shannon Jackson, who's your client, but we did not charge Mr. Copeland, Mr. Garlington, or Mr. Sledge with the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Well, let's be clear. They were charged,
They were charged by the police, yes.
and they were arrested and put in jail
They were, yes.
based on the word of Spencer Wright,
That is correct.
who lied about his name.
He did.
And in those 3 people's place that were eventually released, 3 new people have been charged.
That's, well, 4 people actually, but yes.
Okay. 3 new people and Mr. Stillwell.
Yes.
So essentially what we're saying in layman's terms is Detective Thorpe added 250.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance
Basis.
and just unnecessary. Detective Thorpe batted 250.
I'm a sustaining objection.
So you have your report, correct?
I do.
All right. And your report is approximately 100 pages long?
140, I believe.
140. Okay. And You began working in January of 2016,
That's correct, yes.
and on page 2 of those 140, well, let me back up, I'm sorry. Almost the first order of business in this report is your concerns about Spencer Wright.
Correct. That is how my investigation began.
Because you were doing a thorough investigation and you looked at the video and noticed the man who was saying he witnessed the event was not where he said he was.
Correct.
And so your report, this 140-page report, begins with discussion of the video and Spencer Wright.
Yes.
On page 2 of the report, in the first paragraph, you talk about Detective Thorpe finding probable cause for these 4 individuals that are originally charged.
Yes.
And then you say, Kenneth Copeland, Demikian Garlington, and Antonio Sledge, or I'm sorry, you say Copeland, Garlington, and Sledge consisted almost entirely of the statement of Mr. Spencer Wright, correct?
Correct.
All right. You went on to say, with respect, or to write, with respect to Mr. Jackson, Mr. Wright also implicated him in the statement summarized below. However, there was another witness named Quindarius Zachary that also implicated Mr. Jackson.
That is correct.
Okay. So on page 2 of the report, you were saying that there was an additional witness against, when I said Mr. Jackson, you were calling a Mr. Jackson report, but it's my client, Mr. Stillwell.
Yeah, back then he was known as Shannon Jackson. That's why I say Shan Jackson, AKA Shan Stillwell, or vice versa.
All right. You, as the investigator, did not have the same doubts or concerns about Mr. Jackson's case or Mr. Stillwell's case than you did with the other 3 defendants, based on additional witness testimony, correct?
Well, I mean, I at least had some evidence that he committed the murder. Yes.
All right, and just to be clear, in January 2016, when you're working on this case and throughout your investigation, Shannon Stillwell is still presumed innocent in jail.
He was in jail for about 250 days, I believe, on the murder charge before he was transferred, I want to say, to the Department of Corrections on unrelated matter. But yes, he was in jail, yes.
And he didn't bond out on this case until, on the 2015 case, until October of 2018, isn't that true?
I recall, if I remember correctly, he was booked into the jail on October 23rd and made bond the next day because he had obviously gotten a bond long before then because he had been in jail over 90 days on the murder.
Right, but he was in jail for 3 years.
On the murder?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe he was jailed for 3 years. I believe he was in jail for about 250 days on the
Okay,
murder.
well, we'll say 250 days. I mean, that's a substantial amount of time, correct?
Legally, it's subjective as to what's substantial.
Okay, well, you wouldn't want an innocent man locked in jail for that long.
Objection, argumentative.
I sustain this to form.
Thank you,
I
Judge.
sustain it.
Okay, are you an ethical prosecutor?
Yes.
And for the record, I believe Mr. Sprinkle is. Okay. If you felt that there was no case against Mr. Stillwell like you thought about the others, you would presumably have done something to get his release, correct?
Right. What I would have done is I would have told his defense attorneys that essentially there was no evidence, which is what I did with the other co-defendants. So,
Okay.
right. But with Mr. Stillwell, the absence of evidence wasn't quite as stark.
Okay. And so you didn't take any proactive steps to seek the release of Mr. Stillwell like you did the others?
No.
long has, to your knowledge, are you familiar with the internal workings of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
Pretty familiar. I've been working there for over a decade, so.
How long has the Fulton County District Attorney's Office been investigating YSL?
I can't speak to what the gang unit was doing at around this time. They were in a section of the office to which I didn't have access. Now, if I knocked on the door, if they were there, they would generally let me in, but I didn't just have unfettered access to their area such that I could wander in at any given point. So they were by design closed off from the rest of the office.
Well, certainly you were aware generally of whether there was as you were working this Donovan Thomas case, whether there was an active investigation of YSL.
Yes, there was. And so to answer your question, to the best of my knowledge, as far as I knew, or as far as I can remember, the investigation into YSL really started with the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Okay, so 2015. And what about investigations into Jeffrey Williams?
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
I'm alleging that this has been a strategic decision to withhold the prosecution of Shannon Stillwell, who they claim to have had a case with or against, a solid case against since 2015. And I want to know why they waited 8 years to bring this
Well, then
case.
why don't you ask him?
Well, I want to know what investigation.
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead and ask him, please.
To your knowledge, how long have you had an investigation ongoing, when I say you, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, against Jeffrey Williams?
For me personally, it would have been around, I want to say April of 2016 when I found out that he rented the car that was utilized in the drive-by shooting.
Okay. What about, not you personally, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
That I can't answer. As far as I know, I don't know. I have no idea.
Is
If there were any other investigations regarding Mr. Jeffrey Williams, I don't know about them.
Well, could you answer if you knew, do you believe that you were the first person to begin an investigation into Jeffrey Williams, or do you believe that there was already investigations into Jeffrey Williams?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance into investigations regarding Jeffrey Williams.
I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did you have discussions with Paul Howard about the Donovan Thomas case?
Yes.
How often?
Well, there would obviously, every few months, actually, maybe there were times it would actually be more often than that. It was definitely not one or two. I can tell you that. It was more than that.
Was he familiar with the facts of the case as alleged?
Yes.
Would Mr. Paul Howard have had access to the gang unit of the district attorney's office that you did not have unfettered access to?
I would presume yes. I guess I never asked him, nor did he ever tell me. It never came up, but given that he was the head of the entire office, I would assume that he had access to every room of the office, but I'm only assuming.
Do leaders of different units within the office meet with each other?
Yes, yes.
Is there coordination between units in the district attorney's office?
Yes, of course.
Was there coordinations between units back in 2015?
Yes.
Could there have been discussions that you were not privy to about these matters?
I'm sure.
Okay. Mr. Sprinkle, you have, is it fair to say that you largely have investigative function within the district attorney's office?
Yes, for the most part.
But you all are also an attorney.
I am.
You have a bar code.
I do.
You're familiar with the laws of, the rules of evidence in Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. You would agree that we're in here today not on a murder case, but a large RICO case, which one part of it has an alleged murder.
I am familiar with the indictment that is before the court, that is being litigated right now. And I am familiar that the primary or the first count or couple of counts is a RICO case. As far as I'm concerned, I was primarily, if not really exclusively, concerned with the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Correct. But you are aware that this indictment that we're all in here today involves more than just the 2015 shooting of Donovan Thomas.
I'm aware of that, yes.
Okay. And there are 4 people that you chose to charge and indict. Well, we'll get to that. There's 4 people that you advised the state to indict for the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Well, I believe there are 5, and I was definitely part of meetings regarding the indictment. But again, this is really Don Geary that was leading the charge on who to indict for the murder. Now, was I influential? Of course, but I wasn't the one who ultimately made that decision. But
You weren't the one to make the decision. When was this case ready to take to the grand jury, the alleged murder of Donovan Thomas?
Well, it wasn't an alleged murder. He absolutely was murdered. It was May of 2022.
Oh, it wasn't ready?
No, when was the case presented to the grand jury?
When was it ready to take to the grand jury?
I can't, again, because Don Geary was the attorney that was working on that, and I wasn't. Well, I guess it was ready when we presented it, right? I would assume.
Well, that's when your office chose to present it.
Yes.
I'm asking when it was ready.
I don't, you would have to ask Don Geary that.
Okay.
Because as you said, this is more just the murder of Donovan Thomas is a big RICO case. So.
I'm aware of that, but I'm very interested in when the singular incident, the January 2015 shooting of Donovan Thomas was ready to present to the grand jury.
I would just have to say May of 2022, unless you can define the word ready with a little more specificity.
That's when your office decided to present it, is your answer.
Right, correct.
Mr. Sharp, hold on one second.
He received credit for each of those days. That's 2. The new found offense, which he got 10 do 3, went off to prison, came back, found it out next day. One time he was only one there that I'm aware of. My information was. Let's see. I don't know if he was arrested. He was in jail for those things. Okay. And stuff so I wouldn't necessarily. I can argue the book and I received credit for every one of those days towards the sentence. One that other those other crimes. Sorry. It's He's also arrested for drug charges. Yeah. I don't have this drug charges. Not for that. Okay. No, I can't help you with that. I would just ask. Don't tell me. Do what you can. Like, no.
All right, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court once again. You're aware of the rules of evidence in Georgia,
Yes,
okay, that dictate what is admissible at trial?
that's correct.
Okay. You are aware that the rules of evidence are different for a RICO case, correct?
That's correct.
You're aware that typically in a criminal case, quote unquote, bad character evidence is not admissible against a defendant.
With exceptions governed by 404B.
Right. And 404B, propensity evidence would not be admissible under 404B.
No, it's motive, intent, knowledge, plan or scheme, preparation, absence of mistake or opportunity.
You're aware of the fact that my client, Mr. Stillwell, because this is a RICO case, is being tried for 2 murders at the same time, correct?
I am familiar with the second murder from earlier this year, yes.
You're also aware that because this is a RICO case that was indicted in 2022, my client is accused of over a dozen overt acts that are listed in the indictment.
I am generally aware of the format of the indictment. I haven't studied it. If you're telling me that then I'm sure that's true.
You would agree that oftentimes if people are simultaneously accused of 2 separate crimes, they receive different trials for different crimes, correct? Different allegations.
Well, it would depend on if it was, for example, a crime spree based, temporal proximity being very close to the incidents or almost considered one continuous incident, then you may indict them together. But particularly given the length of time between the 2 incidents, you would generally indict them separately, correct?
Okay, so, and you're aware that the other murder that is alleged against my client is from 2022.
Correct.
You would agree that that would not have temporal proximity, correct?
No, I would, if these were just 2 completely independent murders, I would not put the 2015 murder on the same indictment as the 2022 murder. They'd be 2 different murders under normal circumstances.
As a lawyer, can you see where that would be prejudicial against my client?
Well, yes, I suppose if you were to have 2 murders on the indictment, then the jury would be told initially that there was a finding of probable cause on not 1, but 2 different murders. And so I can understand that.
What about evidence being presented and discussed about the actions of other individuals for things that occurred years after 2015? Would those typically come in for a murder that happened in 2015?
Well, it would depend. If it was a gang-related murder, maybe. Because, when there's a gang charge that's placed on somebody, then there's a lot more evidence that can come in related to the street gang.
What about if your office decided to indict this 2015 incident in a timely manner and didn't wait till 2022? Would this case have
Objection, Your
already been
Honor.
tried?
Objection as to speculative and argumentative.
I stand the objection.
Are you, through your investigation, did you come across a gentleman by the name of Terman Stillwell?
I did. Yeah, Detective Thorpe and I spoke with him, I believe, in early 2016.
Okay, and Termon Stillwell. Who found Termon Stillwell?
I believe it was Detective Thorpe. It wasn't me, so it must have been Detective Thorpe. And I don't recall how he learned about Tremont Stillwell.
Ever ask Detective Thorpe about the circumstances on how he found Tremont?
I'm doing all this typing in the chat like somebody watching, but family. Nobody's watching but family. So I'm gonna say what I want to say. This RICO is based on a 2015 murder that they had evidence to charge. It's 2023. We could say it's 2022, but it's not 2022. And she wanted to push this trial before the release of Gunna and the co-creator of YSL. She wanted, and I don't believe he's the co-creator because, like I said in my earlier podcast, Kevin Liles and Lyle Cohen gave YSL to Young Thug as a gift after his success on the label of 300, making 300 a viable label. I remember when it was given. YSL don't have nothing to do with Slime, Stoner, or none of that shit. YSL is a 3-letter acronym of a female clothing line because they associated Young Thug with femininity for marketing purposes. The monikers and the names and all the bullshit that came with YSL came after. This is what young street people did to the name after it was created by Kevin Liles and Lyle Cohen. Young Thug didn't create it. Young Thug's best friend didn't create YSL. None of these Negroes in Atlanta had anything to do with the creation of or the proliferation of YSL. YSL is a 3-letter acronym and a fashion house. Why has Young Thug never been sued by YSL, the fashion house? It's because YSL is co-owned by Lyle Cohen, the head of YouTube Music, and Kevin Liles. Or else Young Thug would have been sued. You think YSL, the fashion house, the billion-dollar media mogul would be associated with a gang? Why would YSL? I own YSL. YSL La Home bought for me by my beautiful wife, Mrs. Perfect Timing. I have a collection of watches. I have a collection of jewelry. Just like shout out to Kevin Samuels. I watched Kevin Samuels before he got popular. There's a perfume cologne called Molecule number 3 or something like that. It's a very unique perfume cologne that you layer. You wear it with other colognes. I learned about this I had this cologne called Canali. It had to be thrown away. It broke my heart. It cost me $300 for this bottle. And I know the black man who made me throw it away took it out the garbage can. Black people treat black people very piss poorly. I was on a business flight to Wisconsin to get further my education. I've always liked really nice colognes. I work as a senior director, senior level analyst, senior level project manager. I'm in the meeting, running the meeting with the heads of departments of cardiology, of GI, of interventional radiology, all at once. All of the chiefs are there. They're all pissy. They're all assholes. The only thing that calms the whole room down is this very neat, this very intelligent, this very well-spoken black man who smells and presents marvelously. That was me. So shout out to Kevin Samuels and that Molecule, that cologne, but they made me throw my shit away. YSL La Home, my wife repurchased me a beautiful cologne. They didn't have that cologne when we went back to Macy's. It was a beautiful young brother, a salesman. And you know how they spray you. He would not just spray me and my wife. He would greet us. He knew how to get the person in the position that they would want to purchase. This is a $300 purchase, right? But see, I would purchase the cologne because it's for my job, right? And you could write it off as a tax because as an LLC, as a contractor, as an LLC, you can write off these things. So he knew who he was talking to, right? So he presented me so when Kevin Samuels talked about perfume versus colognes and the alcohol content, I was already familiar because this young black man had educated me on it. Shout out to the young black man at the Macy's perfume department Excellent, young brother. I pray you're doing well. I know he's doing well. But my wife that day bought me the YSL La Home, and it was a night scent. They had a day scent, and it was 2 bottles, and it came with a bag, a YSL bag. And this was like, it was before all of this stuff. But my point of bringing this up is I want to give props to my wife. I love you, baby. And the fact that YSL is a prominent fashion house. YSL is such a prominent fashion house that you don't really see it on blacks and rappers because it's so expensive and it's so exclusive still to this day. You see some people wear YSL, right? East Saint Laurent. East Saint Laurent it's an acronym for East Saint Laurent. 21 Savage, who has people in this indictment. I'm gonna say it again. 21 Savage, where Slaughter Gang. 21 Savage has a gang called Slaughter Gang. I don't mean to call it a gang, but he's named the Slaughter Gang. They are named in this indictment. 21 Savage nickname is the Saint Laurent. What is it called? Saint Laurent Don or something like that. Something like that. His nickname has something to do with YSL. Is East Saint Laurent and 21 Savage and Slaughter Gang is a Laurent. I forget. But Saint Laurent Don or something like that, right? My point of bringing this up is that YSL is a prominent fashion house. If YSL, the record label, was a gang, I believe YSL, the fashion house, would have filed a lawsuit against Jeffrey and Lyle Cohen and Kevin Lyles to change the name. They never did, because that would affect that fashion line negatively. But these country bumpkins in Atlanta, this small town country bumpkin, you see that nappy ass hair that woman got, that district attorney got? She should have got her fucking hair done. It's embarrassing. But now these country bunkers with that bad perm want to come in and say YSL is a gang without charging the people who actually created YSL and gifted it to Jeffrey. I'm going to say this every time I do this. YSL is a 3-letter acronym that has nothing to do with stoner life. For all the ignorant dummies out there, the podcasters who say this stupid shit, it has nothing to do with slime. Slime came later. Stoner came later. But in the hood, we always make up shit. YSL is a feminine female fashion house. Young Thug wore a dress, and he played on his femininity and his sexuality early in his career for marketing. So what would be a better name for the person who we made wear a dress and a person who plays with his femininity? That's why he named the album Beautiful Young Thugger Girl, right? To this day, he still plays on the fact that people think he's gay. He's from Atlanta, and he plays on his femininity and sexuality. The name YSL, again, is a play on Young Thug's femininity and sexuality. It has nothing to do with stoner. It has nothing to do with slime. It was created by white people who run the marketing and record label because they wanted it to be profitable. You think they just let this young street black guy just name a record company given to him by Kevin Lyles and Lyle Cohen the name of a gang that he does crime? No, you fucking pieces of shit. I'm gonna say that again. Do you think that Kevin Lyles and Lyle Cohen would name a record company after a street gang? I'm gonna say that one more time. Do you think Lyle Cohen and Kevin Lyles would name a company that they are part owners with and they profit from based on a street gang? They could have called it Crip Records, Blood Records. They could have called it Faux Records. They did not do that. The white people who run the marketing at 300. This is a business, ladies and gentlemen. The white people who run the marketing at 300 created YSL as a vehicle, just like I created the MMS show, Money, Music, and Sports, as a vehicle to promote my podcast, to promote my channel. YSL is a vehicle. YSL is a product of 300. It was created to make money for and it did. Because 300 had a bad name, nomenclature. After the debacle with QC, after the shit with T Grizzly, 300 needed to have separation from the success of Young Thug. Because the name 300, and that's why Kevin Lyle Cohen himself separated from 300, because it was putting negativity on the artists. So to get separation, but it's still 300. Make no mistakes. YSL is still 300. How many people listening to this don't even understand what I'm saying, that don't know that 300, the record label? How many people, I'm a YouTube content creator, how many people listening don't know who Lyle Cohen is? The head of Def Jam, the creator of Run DMC, who now runs YouTube Music, created 300 after he left Def Jam. He was part of Run DMC. Kevin Lyles, who ran Def Jam, left Def Jam with Lyle Cohen to create 300. 300 is the new Death Row. 300 is the new Def Jam, right? Are we up to speed now? 300 is owned by a white man named Lyle Cohen, who is now the head of YouTube Music. He created 300, the label, after leaving Def Jam with his friend Kevin Lyles. They worked together to create Def Jam with Russell Simmons. After Russell Simmons sells Def Jam to Polygram for $250 million, Lyle Cohen, Kevin Lyles creates 300 to imprint. They signed T Grizzly. Stop, Pop and Drop It. Stop, Pop and Drop It. What's that nigga name? Y'all can put his name in the chat. From St. Louis, Huey, Stop, Pop and Drop It. T Grizzly, first day out. They had a lot of success, but then they hit it real big with one of their executives, Coach K. Coach K worked for 300 and created QC with the street guy named P, who was Gucci Mane's friend. And when Gucci Mane was going to prison, P was still on the street. Gucci Mane gave P, Quavo, Young Thug, Rich Homie Quan. P, along with Coach K, who was an employee of QC, created Quality Control Music Group. That was on 300 also. Young Thug, who was signed to 300, just like Huey, just like T Grizzly, was one of the most successful artists. 300 was a struggling label until Young Thug hit it big. When Young Thug hit it big, he was gifted his own label, 3-letter acronym, CMB, Cash Money, No Limit. Everybody has a 3-letter acronym, YRN. It's part of marketing. It's not gang culture to have a 3-letter acronym. It's marketing. I've been saying they just shit on black men. They shit on black people. There's no respect for black creators, artistic content. We create the culture. These 3-letter acronyms rule the world. NBA Youngboy, YSL, YRN in the Bay Area. One of my wife's favorite artists is The Boy. He got Young Wild Nigga on his chain, YWN. What about The Boys? Migos got YRN, Young Rich Niggas. YFN Lucci, who they was beefing with. What about the little young niggas that got their chain robbed? The dude from Houston, and he was hanging with the other little light-skinned niggas. They had a 3-letter acronym. It's marketing. It's marketing. YSL is marketing. So far, they've been allowed to call YSL a gang. YSL is not a gang. It's a record label. And Young Thug, or the gentleman who was free, did not create YSL. It was created in a boardroom by the head of marketing of 300 for profit. It never would have made it. Think of anybody heard any interviews with Noriega about Lyle Cohen? It never would have made it out of marketing. If Lyle Cohen and Kevin Lyles didn't think YSL was profitable, it never would have made it out of marketing. It never would have made it out of 300. It is an absolute farce to put forth that YSL is a gang without any of the context behind Young Thug as an artist. He wore a dress. It's a 3-letter acronym of a fashion house. And this fashion house is associated with Young Thug for marketing. Now, beyond that, this case has opened up wide. You got the suppression of Young Thug's home because they falsified the warrant. And now you have cross-examination of a public defender from the DA's office who had evidence to charge this young man with murder 7-8 years ago. Hold up. This whole case is based on the murder committed by someone who's not related to Jeffrey, not Jeffrey's friend, and the murder took place in 2015. 8 years ago. It's not 2022. You can't say it's 2023. It could have been happening in the beginning of 2015. So potentially we have a RICO based on the murder that took place 10 years ago that was never charged. Now, it's one thing if this person was in jail serving time and they went back and said, oh, this murder that he was found guilty to is part of this long string of crimes. They never charged, even though they had evidence. And they are not saying whether or not they have been investigating Jeffrey for 10 years. This is just like the case that Jay Prince won against the feds, when they had been illegally investigating Jay Prince for 20 years without his knowledge, trying to get him on a federal indictment, RICO. And Jay Prince beat it because it was illegal. You can't secretly investigate. That's the whole thing about the Secret Service. You cannot secretly investigate another American citizen. Jay Prince won that federal indictment because they were secretly investigating Jay Prince and Rap-A-Lot Records for 20 years. Jay Prince had alleged that he was under investigation. The FBI denied that because it would be illegal. It came out in court that the FBI had been surveilling and investigating illegally without cause Jay Prince for 20 years. And he won the case. And he got paid money from the government. Now, it turns out, it sounds like Young Thug has been under investigation illegally by the state, but now it makes sense why the feds hasn't come in. The feds don't want to get sued. This case is sloppy all around. I heard another lawyer say, what's the difference between the feds and the state? It wouldn't be this sloppy. This is why the feds never came in, because you have an illegal investigation. When the feds looked at this, think about this. The feds looked at the case. She wanted the feds to charge him on the RICO, but they didn't. When the feds look at, okay, what the RICO based on, a 2015 homicide that you had evidence, which is cool. That's cool if you do that. But were you investigating Jeffrey as a gang at that time? And you can't do that. That's the whole reason why. Do you guys understand what's happening? There's a public defender on the stand. This person is not a defendant. He is a lawyer in the DA's office. I've never seen this happen again. We may never see it happen again. This is a rogue district attorney office. You will never see a public defender on the stand. This is why the judge is upset, because it's making the judge courtroom look like a fucking circus. Why is a district attorney on the stand in this RICO case? You guys are making me look like a damn fool. That's why he's not helping the lawyer. But the lawyer got this public defender on the stand because these are very relevant questions. Why did this happen like this? Why are you doing this to this young black man? I need to know, as a lawyer representing the case, why haven't you charged this man? It's been 10 years. It's been 10 years. Why is this happening this way? And they can't answer. And this district attorney, a black woman, mind you, with a bad perm, she cannot articulate why, and she keeps objecting to why it is they had this illegal investigation of this young man without proffer. Now keep in mind, this same white man on the stand, he charged 4 other men for the murder, but they had to let him go because they didn't have evidence, and the person who gave them the names lied about his name. So the first question he said, so for those other men, you went to yes, I went to the district attorney's office and told them, drop that case. He said, but you didn't do that for my client. He said, no. Even though you did not have adequate evidence either on my client, you decided to hold this in your back pocket and then charge Jeffrey with a RICO 10 years later. The problem with that is, ladies and gentlemen, is the same thing with the R. Kelly case. Because they're using a RICO statute, they can bring in faulty evidence, right? In a RICO, they don't have to prove that Jeffrey did a crime. In a RICO, all they have to do is use Young Gunna's statement. You don't have to prove that Jeffrey actually did something in the RICO. In a RICO, you can use Gunna's statement. Gunna testified that it's a gang. That's enough to find Jeffrey guilty in a RICO case. In a RICO case, you can use a criminal who's lied against another criminal. In a regular case, there's hearsay, and you got to have a person who has a value, reputation in the community. You can't bring in a murderer from prison to testify against me, right? Not in a regular case. You have to have someone of credibility, because he could be testifying to get out of jail. but not in a RICO. In a RICO case, you can use people who are in jail, people you can pressure people who want to get out of jail to say what you need them to say to convict, because RICO was created for John Gotti and the Italian mafia, who would kill witnesses, and they called him the Teflon Don, because they couldn't prosecute John Gotti because he would kill the witnesses. So Giuliani created a statute that violates your constitutional right. The black women who have run in this case know this. The RICO violates your constitutional rights, but the RICO was granted, and the RICO was allowed to violate constitutional rights of criminals, like mafioso style criminals who can't be captured by the law through regular ways the law is created. Do y'all understand what I just said? The RICO was created to go after individuals who can't be prosecuted by the normal law. RICO is for people who are like killing witnesses. Now, remember when the first case was put forth, they said we can't let Gunna and Thug bail out because YSL was a gang and they kill people and they will kill the witnesses. The DA said, I'm afraid that they might kill me. Do y'all remember that? The DA said, I'm afraid that they might kill me, but she let Gunna out in 7 months. The DA said, I'm afraid that they might kill me. I'm getting death threats, but she let the co-creator out in 7 months. I think 5 people free. The DA ain't scared to get killed no more. Y'all see how this case is going? They should never have been allowed to use the RICO if you were going to let these young men out in 7 months. Where is the fear that they would kill witnesses, that they would kill and shoot, when none of the men you let out had ever killed or shot anyone? And it turns out the only murder that you have is from 10 years ago. So there was no threat of violence against any of the witnesses, against the district attorney. There was no reason to keep Jeffrey and Young Thug incarcerated. These black women, this black judge, this black police department have been railroading these young men and subverting their constitutional rights. That's why I'm doing this story. Y'all hear me out there? Y'all hear what I just said? There was no reason to charge them with the RICO, and there's no reason to charge Jeffrey. So you have to use a RICO to charge Jeffrey because Jeffrey's never committed a crime. This is a murder from 10 years ago. Now, you know what's funny? Jeffrey's baby mama was murdered at a bowling alley on her birthday. He was at home with the children. That murder is not part of the RICO. Like I said, YFN is not part of the RICO. That murder is not part of the RICO. This is based on the murder 10 years ago. So thank you guys for watching. I just want to interject quickly because it's just family. So I just want to throw my 2 cents in while it's just family here. So thank y'all for tuning in. We're going to go back to the video.
Objection, Your Honor, as to the relevance.
Yes, relevant, sir.
I mean, this is the investigation we've been talking about.
Mr. Sprinkle,
This is the investigation we've been talking about that we admitted this report as part of, and I'm asking about the investigation. I'm cross-examining the investigation.
Oh, the objection. Go ahead, Mr. Sprinkle.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Go ahead and answer that.
So if I remember correctly, he was in the Fulton County Jail. Well, we interviewed him at APD, but he was brought over from the Fulton County Jail. Contemporaneous with his arrest, he told, from what I remember, he definitely told somebody with the Atlanta Police Department that he had information on the murder. And if I remember correctly, it was the members of the Apex unit. They may have been the ones that arrested him. But at any rate, he said something to some police officer that he knew something about the murder. That got back to Detective Thorpe. So Detective Thorpe told me about it. And then Detective Thorpe transported him from the Fulton County Jail to APD where we interviewed him.
Did you ever talk to the member of the Apex unit to confirm that they were the ones that had first contact with Tremont Stillwell?
I don't recall.
And Tremont Stillwell, he was in jail for what?
Family violence battery, I believe.
Okay, a felony?
I don't remember if he was a recidivist or not. It may have been. I just don't remember.
And who was he accused of battering, beating?
I think it was his wife, if I remember correctly.
What's her name?
That I don't recall.
Would it be Vanetta Guffey?
That's it.
Okay. And so Mr. Stillwell, Tremont Stillwell, let me be clear. Tremont Stillwell came to your attention, and did you have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Stillwell?
I did.
And when was this?
March 22nd, 2016.
So we're still back in 2016.
We are.
Okay. And did Mr. Tremont Stillwell claim to know my client Shannon Stillwell?
Yes, I believe he said that they were relatives. They were related. Like Mr. Stillwell, Tremont Stillwell, said he was his cousin, if I remember correctly.
Did you ever confirm that there was any family relation?
Well, apart from their last name being the same, or one of Mr. Stillwell's, Shannon Stillwell's last names, because he was known as either Jackson or Stillwell. I mean, even back in 2016, I knew that was one of his aliases. I was never completely clear as to which name was actually his name, Shannon Jackson or Shannon Stillwell.
Okay, well, let's just benefit of the doubt, it's Shannon Stillwell. Did you ever independently, other than they had the same last name, confirm that there was any relation between the two?
I don't remember.
But Tremont Stillwell claimed that he was Shannon's uncle.
I thought it was cousin.
Cousin, okay.
Yes.
And Tremont Stillwell was in jail at the time that he met with you guys, correct? I know that you brought him over to APD headquarters, but he had pending charges.
That is correct.
Okay. And he gave you some information he claimed could be used against Shannon Stillwell.
That is correct.
Okay. And he claimed that back in 2015, Shannon Stillwell ran up to him while he was walking with his wife in the park.
That is correct.
Did he indicate which park?
I don't recall the park. I just recall it being August, or it was sometime during the fall of 2015 that Tremont Stillwell, as he strolled through the park with his wife, Miss Guffey, he came upon Shannon Stillwell, who complained of getting shot at some point in the very recent past, and that the reason for this was that he had participated in the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Okay. And according to Mr. Stillwell, according to Tremont Stillwell, Shannon Stillwell said that Kenneth Copeland, the state's witness, was also involved.
That I don't, yeah, actually, I think he did say that now that you mentioned it. Yes.
Okay. And if Tremont Stillwell was to be believed, that would be a confession coming out of Shannon Stillwell's mouth.
A third-party confession, yes, sir.
Okay. And of course, as we saw with Mr. Wright, Mr. Stillwell, Tremont Stillwell, had pending charges at this time.
He did.
And as an investigator, you wanted to corroborate what Tremont Stillwell was claiming that he had witnessed.
That's correct.
And you were also aware that there were many street rumors going around at that time.
There were, yes.
Okay. So you sought to corroborate the statement of Tremont Stillwell.
That is correct.
And you decided to call in Miss Vanetta Guffey to talk to her about the situation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And speaking of Vanetta Guffey was important because she was the person that Tremont Stillwell claimed was his wife.
That's correct.
And that Tremont Stillwell was claimed was present when Shannon Stillwell supposedly made this statement, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you were able to speak with Miss Vanetta Guffey, correct?
Yes, I believe, I definitely remember speaking with some female after that Tremont Stillwell interview, and it was related to that interview, and it didn't go very well.
Okay, now, Mr. Sprinkle, I want you to know that I have no objection, of course, subject to the judge's rulings, to you referring to your notes to answer these questions.
I'm actually referring to the Exhibit 11 to,
Your report.
right.
Right, and I have no objection to that at all. So we're clear on this. What page are you on?
Well, the pages aren't numbered, but I'm on the page that starts with on May 11, 26. Oh, well, it just so happens I'm on the right page.
All right, cool.
All right, so it was on May 11, 2016 when Detective Thorpe and I interviewed Vanetta Guffey on the 7th floor of my office, the DA's office.
Okay. And you said it was you and who that interviewed her?
Detective Thorpe, Jim Thorpe Jr. with the Atlanta Police Department.
And how did you get Miss Guffey to come to your office?
I don't recall, I believe if I had to, hold on, let me see.
Did you tell her it was about Termon Stillwell's case about him beating her?
I believe so. That sounds right.
Okay, so is it, and I'm not suggesting it's illegal for you to do this, but you misled her about why you wanted to speak.
Well, I mean, as a practical matter, I mean, that it was a legitimate area of inquiry as well. She was a victim on a case, but, we didn't want to tell her about the murder because she didn't even know that she was part of the murder investigation yet. So to get her into the office, we thought it would be better to just not tell her about that part and rather just tell her about the case in which she already knew she was a witness.
Okay, fair enough. And you eventually told her you wanted to speak to her about this case.
That's correct.
And did you tell her that Termon had said that she may have witnessed something?
I did.
Do you remember exactly how you worded it? I
Let's
shouldn't say exactly. Can you paraphrase how you worded it if you don't remember exactly?
I asked her about Shannon and asked her if she knew of Shannon. She said that she did, that she considered him her little nephew. And she also said she wasn't fond of Termon Stillwell because, going back to the case in which she was a victim, because of him beating on her. At the time of the interview, Mr. Termon Stillwell was still in the Fulton County Jail. All I remember is that when we brought up Shannon, her mood, she was relatively pleasant at the beginning of the interview. And, after we discussed the battery and moved on to Shannon, she was, her mood changed. Shannon Stillwell, your client, her mood changed rather dramatically. In fact, it culminated in her storming out of the room and basically running out of the office.
Right. And she made it clear to you that you shouldn't believe a word that Termon Stillwell says.
She called him a liar.
Right.
As she stormed out, I believe she called him a liar.
He's unreliable.
Right. That's what she said.
And you don't dispute that Miss Guffey knows Mr. Termon Stillwell very well.
No, she knew him pretty well. She was a victim on a family violence battery case, so you have to know somebody pretty well to be considered a victim of a family violence offense.
Okay.
Mr. Sharp, before you pose your next question, how much longer do you think you'll have?
I was about to ask like 3 more questions.
Oh.
Unlike Mr. Menendez, I think I'm being...
Who's 2 is not really 2?
Right.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I'll be the judge of that, okay? This is number 1 coming up right here, okay?
Pressure on. Mr. Sprinkle, did Miss Guffey indicate to you that she was not... Did she ever indicate to you that she had heard Shannon Stillwell say anything about a murder?
No. Without even refreshing my recollection, I mean, the interview ended pretty abruptly after she realized that we were asking about Shannon Stillwell. It wouldn't have even got, she was no longer participating in the interview, essentially. Towards the end, I was trying to ask her questions as she ran away from me, so.
She told you that she doesn't know anything about the statement that Shannon Stillwell allegedly made to Termon Stillwell.
That's correct.
That Termon Stillwell claimed that she witnessed.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you aware of where Miss Vanetta Guffey is now?
Well, I've been told, and this I haven't independently verified it, but as of yesterday, it's my understanding she's deceased.
Okay,
She didn't die yesterday. I learned about it yesterday.
right. I beg the court's indulgence, just briefly. Mr. Sprinkle, you, as part of your investigations, do you stay abreast to what's going on at 901 Rice Street?
Well, yes, particularly with respect to the jail calls.
Okay. Are you aware that there have been multiple attacks on my client, Shannon Stillwell, since, and when I say attacks, stabbings, he's been incarcerated this year?
This year?
Yes.
No, I wasn't aware of
Are
that.
you aware of multiple attacks on Shannon Stillwell while he's been incarcerated?
Objection, Your Honor, as to relevance,
It's,
as to whether or not the
sorry,
defendant has been
prejudice.
attacked.
he's been incarcerated for a long time, and it's certainly relevant that he's
It
being
is.
attacked.
I'll overrule the objection.
I remember a time in late 2015, which would have been around the time he was arrested. He was actually a witness on a murder case. And he was in the same area of the jail as some rival gang members. That's about all. And that there was an issue with that, but that's about all I remember. I don't remember anything about him being attacked.
Are you aware that he's on 23-hour lockdown for his own safety at this time?
No, I didn't know about that.
I don't have anything else, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sprinkle. Thank you.
All right, Madam, Ms. Love,
Thank you, Judge.
it's about 1:30. Can we take a comfort lunch lunch break to 2:15? And then we'll resume at that point in time, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. We're going to be recessed until 2:15, and we'll come back at that point in time.
Perfect Timing Podcast. Stay in recess. We'll be back. Salute.